What's up again, everybody? I'm Clayton, your boy Sizzle Dizzle. What's going on? Hope you're all doing well out there in that crazy world. Look, I apologize. I did not get this review out sooner. It wasn't very active last week. Was fighting through an illness. I'm over it now where we've made it to the other side. I'm feeling better, feeling strong. So yeah, coming through on the other side. So yeah, hopefully this week I'll have this one and a ranking video coming out. I don't know if I'll get to it this week, but I'm going to try. To do a big ranking of all the classic Universal monster films. So you guys seem to have wanted that based on the poll that I posted on my channel. So today we're talking the Monster Squad, you freaks, released in 1987. This movie has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people, especially your 80s kids, people that grew up in the 80s, even 70s, maybe even 90s, that grew up with this one. A lot of them feel that nostalgia. I did see this as a kid because we grew up watching a lot of the Universal classic monster films. Those were some of the ones that my dad liked, so he exposed me to those when I was pretty young. I do remember seeing this as a kid, but I don't know that I actually sat and watched the whole thing all the way through. Just kind of like the parts with the Wolfman in it, or the part with the monsters in it that I liked, but I don't think it was until much later on that I actually committed to watching this film through from start to finish. So I have a little bit of a different opinion on it. I do still like it, I'll just say that. But yeah, watching it back for this review, I was interested to see if it was going to hold up as well. So I'll kind of give my thoughts on that as well. So yeah, starting with the positives of Monster Squad, I like the premise here. I like the concept of bringing all these Universal classic monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, the Mummy, and the Gillman, or the Creature, all back together as kind of a huge ensemble tag team death match for the soul of the world. That's what we're dealing with here. It's cool to just see all of them on screen together. You can tell this is kind of a love letter to the Universal classics. And I'm all for it, man, because I like quite a bit of those classic monster films from Universal. So just the concept of it, I think is pretty cool and neat, and something that I'm glad that we got to see all those guys on screen. I like that they took the monsters seriously in this film. They weren't making caricatures out of them. They weren't making a parody out of the monsters. There is a lot of humor in the film, but it's not at the monsters' expenses, and that's what's important to me. I'm not big on like horror comedies where the villains themselves are the joke of the film. I'm not a fan of that. To me, when I'm watching a horror film, I want to feel the threat of the villain. I want to feel the threat of the antagonist. So that's why horror comedies are kind of hard to pull off, because it's so easy to fumble the football, because you're trying for those laughs. You're trying to make the audience laugh. And a lot of times, unfortunately, in my opinion, it comes at the expense of the villains. They are also part of the joke, also part of the punchline. I don't like that, me personally. Some people do, and if that's you, cool, I respect it. But for me, I want the villains taken seriously, and they are in this film. There is humor, but it's not at their expenses. They are handled with respect. They are taken serious. I like that about the film. The threat translates on screen for me, and because of that, I can buy into the plot and what's going on because they take the villain seriously, and because they're handled with reverence. To me, it makes me buy their threat more and buy into the plot more. So that's something that I'm glad that they did. I speaking of the plot, I do like that we have a coherent, plot-driven story in this film. It makes sense. It's a coherent plot with clear motives, clear goals by your characters. It's very simple. It's surface level plot, but it's not incoherent. It's a very okay. You have your monsters trying to get this amulet to take over the world. You have your kids trying to stop them. That's it. And that's sometimes that's all you need. That's what they wanted to do, and they succeeded in that. So, some films take a long time to even get to a motive, to even get to a plot, or the goals of the characters. I can think of a lot that do that, where you're 30 minutes into the film and there's no plot that's being created yet. There's no motives. Like you're sitting there like, what are these characters after? Like, what's their goal here? What are they trying to achieve? This film doesn't have that problem. You're introduced to the characters early on, and you're introduced to their motives pretty early on. So you can kind of ride that plot all the way through, and not feel like there's nothing like that's incoherent or filler or taking up too much time or anything like that. The visual effects, the creature designs, I actually really like in this film. Some people think they're cheesy, maybe by today's standards, but this was 1987, son. For 1987, bro, you had a lot of that stuff going on in the 80s, homie. You got to keep context in mind about when a film was made and not judge a film that's 40 years old now, or close to it, by modern day standards. So for the 80s, I think the effects work look pretty good. I like the effects, the creature designs. They look very much updated by 80 standards. They look like how those characters and those monsters would be presented in the 80s if they came out in the 80s. So, I like the updated look. The Wolfman himself is probably my favorite. I do actually like that design. It looks werewolf-ish, and if you know me, you know my channel, I'm a big werewolf guy. I take my werewolf stuff seriously. I don't mess around when it comes to my wolves. All right, if you're gonna put a werewolf in your movie, you best get that right, son. All right. And I think they do. They take the Wolfman serious. He's a real threat. He's hard to beat. Only silver bullets can R.I.P. his ass. So yeah, I like that. I like the design. It looks good. And definitely better than some of the other 80s werewolf design. I won't mention any names. Silver bullet. But yeah, I like it. So I like that updated, more modern look to the Universal monster characters. And the chemistry between the kids, I think, is pretty good. The 80s, this was an era where you have a lot of those kind of kid group centered films. You had The Breakfast Club, you had The Outsiders, you had Stand By Me, you had the Monster Squad. There were a lot of these films kind of that followed, group of kids, group of teens or whatever. And this was one of them. And I think the chemistry here between the kids is pretty good. I think it's pretty believable. It feels very natural. It doesn't feel like any of the characters, none of them felt out of place. None of them felt out of touch with each other or anything. Like, it felt very natural and good chemistry there. The humor from the kids are really the ones that providing the humor here. And I think it comes natural. You know, it's when I hear some of the kids talk and some of their comedic lines or moments, it lands for the most part, because that's how kids would talk. Like, and that's how these kids, I believe that they would talk this way. I believe that, you know, they would have this kind of banter together. So for the most part, there's some moments of dialogue that don't really work, but for the most part, I like it, and I like the chemistry between the kids. It makes it pretty entertaining. And then the rewatch value here, I think, is moderately high. It's a fun film. It has strong atmosphere, and good entertainment from beginning to end. It's not boring at all, in my opinion. If you can invest with the kids and you're a fan of the Universal monster characters, I think this is a film that has a lot of entertainment for you. So yeah, all that are strong positives for me. Moving into the negatives, there definitely are some issues with the Monster Squad. I think one is the specific target audience here. This is a movie that was very clearly made for kids. This is not an adult centered focused monster film, which is the opposite of the original classic Universal monster movies, which were made for adults, not made for kids. This is the opposite of that. So this one is, they take an old concept, an older Hollywood horror concept of these Universal monsters, and they put it into an 80s modern version for kids. So because of that, there's a very specific audience, a target audience in this film. And for that reason, I do feel like there's a bit of a disconnect. If you didn't grow up on this film and you're coming to it for the first time as an adult, I can definitely see how and why the film wouldn't really work for you. The horror of the film, this is kind of a horror comedy adventure fantasy, but the horror doesn't really work. And the reason for that is because of the target audience. This is more of a kid-focused film. So the horror is much more limited to kind of the monster designs themselves. There's a couple images in the opening, during the opening credits in the Bat Cave. I think when Dracula first appears, that's like kind of creepy or whatever, but this is definitely for like pretty young kids, in a way to reintroduce older horror characters to a very young kid friendly audience. And because that target audience is very narrow and limited, the connection to the emotional effect of the film is also limited. It's very emotionally shallow. And there, the horror doesn't really land. It's not very scary. The comedy is there through the kids, but again, it's not even like overly funny, in my opinion. And the character development is also very shallow, very weak. It's not like much character arcs or depth. It has very minimal emotional progression throughout the film for the characters. So if you're someone that really wants and values like strong character development and character arcs in a movie, which I do, this doesn't really have that. So you almost have to be again, going back to that target audience thing, you almost have to be a fan of the Universal monster characters, have some type of nostalgia to these kids, or maybe just subjectively really find the humor to work for you. But yeah, that target audience does feel a bit disconnecting, and that's kind of an issue for me on this last watch. I was like, there was a number of moments where I was thinking, man, I can see why I liked this as a kid, but as an adult, it's just very emotionally shallow, and very shallow when it comes to character writing and depth, and that sort of thing. The adults are almost entirely underwritten and irrelevant. I can't think of a single adult really in the film outside of the old creepy guy that they confront. Outside of him, I can't really think of a single adult in the film that has any real purpose here. So yeah, again, the narrow audience scope. Some of the villains, although it's cool to see them all on screen together, and there are elements of the villains that are cool, the updated design and effects and stuff like that. As far as character function in the film, the supporting villain characters are very weak. I mean, you have the mummy, who is basically disposable. The Gilman or the creature character, who is barely even utilized. The Frankenstein monster is kind of a joke, really, in the film. The only two villains that actually feel like a threat are Dracula and the Wolfman. And even the Wolfman feels more like a set piece than an actual moving character in the film. What I mean by that is a character that's actually driving or pushing plot and plot beats along. Dracula is really the only one that is plot centered. So you could argue that the other villains in the film are kind of wasted characters. There's not really a whole lot to them. They're easily beaten outside of Wolfman, but again, he's more of just a plot device rather than a real functioning character. But the other ones, I mean, they're basically useless, disposable, just kind of there to create scenes type of thing, but are really pretty underused. And yeah, that's also kind of a problem. You know, the kills, you know, again, because that target audience and this being really for young kids, they don't really go very hard on the kills. You know, I guess I'm trying to think of the best word. The exposure to, you know, the gore and stuff in this film is very, very tamed. And yeah, there's just not a lot for adults in this film. Going back again to that target audience of young kids that they want, you know, they want to reintroduce them to these Universal monster villains. They do that, but at the expense and at the cost of kind of alienating adult viewers, in my opinion. I think most of the adults that I've kind of like talked to and engaged with about this film that like this film, almost all of them, I think, in fact, I would say all of them have expressed that they saw it as a kid, and because they saw it as a kid, they have a lot of nostalgia to it. And so their fondness of this film comes from that. It's not their enjoyment of the film is not based on the quality of structure and technical framework and technical craftsmanship of the film. That's not why people like this movie. It almost, again, all of the adult audience people that I've talked to that like this film tell me they saw it as a kid and they really liked it, or they liked the Universal monster characters, so they just like seeing them on screen. But a lot of that is coming from a nostalgia and a prior experience that comes from your youth viewing this, not seeing it as an adult and saying, "Oh, that's a great film." That's totally fine. I'm not, I like this film. I do. I have a fun time with it. But it's also because I really like those classic Universal monster characters. So I fit into that group. So this is not me disparaging, those people or anything like that. I'm in that group. I put myself in that group as well. All I'm pointing out is simply the fact that structurally, on a craftsmanship or technical level, this film doesn't really have much to offer. There's a very specific target audience for kids that they're really going for, and they succeed in that. So overall, guys, my overall thoughts and review, I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5. I do still really like it. I have a fun time with it. I like the central group of kids. I like the creature design. There's a number of scenes that I really enjoy. Fun, just a really fun film that I do like. But it also suffers for reasons that I mentioned in other aspects. So yeah, those are my final thoughts. 3.5 out of 5 for the Monster Squad. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And until next time, you freaks, kick it and rock on.